Hello friends, this is Ifa. Welcome back to my channel. This video is all about my July 2024 bullet journal setup. If you haven't set up your bullet journal for July yet, let's begin with me. So this month there is no new notebook I'm going to introduce you because I have quite a lot of page left in my previous bullet journal that I'm using for this year, and I think I'll fit up my whole year into this one notebook, and this is kind of a miracle. Anyways, the notebook I'm using for this year is from Bujo, which is an eco-friendly company, and I really like their pages. They are all made from 100% recycled papers, even though after a year they turn out kind of yellow, but I like the paper a lot because they can hold pretty much a good amount of water if I use watercolor in my bullet journal. And as I'm talking about watercolors, this month I'm going to use watercolors for my bullet journal illustrations because I think I have missing this technique a lot, and due to my quick setups I always skip the heavy paintings in my bullet journal. But this time the theme I'm going with, which is a seashell theme, I thought that it will be very convenient and very useful to use a watercolor, because if I use any markers I cannot make it more like the way I wanted, and I like the way the watercolors look in this kind of illustrations. I don't think that I can go with too much color options and blendings with the markers or any other art medium than watercolors. Who don't like warping papers, always scared of watercolors, but I know how much my bullet journal can hold the water amount, and I like to show you the process with me. So let's get started. So for the watercolors, I'm using my Winsor & Newton cotton watercolor, and I'm using the brush came with this set because this brush is very good to paint very small details. I'm starting with this mixture of blue and green to make this kind of a teal color to paint the glass bottle. Here I have to bear in mind that I cannot use too much water on water techniques here because these papers are not watercolor, and I am not going to make this whole illustration more realistic. Keep that in mind so that you don't feel bothered with it because it won't look too realistic. In this bottle there will be some seashells and a little starfish holding this bottle. Besides it, I will add some other seashells later. So the first shell I'm adding here is a scallop, and I use a bit of orange and burnt sienna to give the colors of the scallop. After the scallop, I'm adding a few shells with brown color, and I think this doesn't look quite well, so I'm trying to add more details on it, and I hope it doesn't look too bad. And here for this starfish, I'm using Indiana red to color this out. And I'm using only this brush for this illustration because this brush is very precise for medium areas to smaller areas, and it can be used for pretty small details. But if you don't have this kind of brushes, I'd say you can try them out because they are very useful. So here in these shells, I tried to make some spaces look white or a reflection of light, so that I don't have to add any white paint because watercolor white paints doesn't show up much, and I don't want to use any gouache paints here. So yeah, and for the base of this illustration I am adding a bit of sand color. I think this looks like a sand, and as I've told you that I don't want to make this whole illustration look like a realistic illustration, so I'm not going to add too much details on it. And in between that I wanted to add some pearls and gems here, even though the pearls and gems doesn't look like they are pearls, which should be shiny, and I think it does look like some stones and all. In this illustration I'm not going to use fine liners as an outlines because I don't like the outlined paintings every time, so Here my thought is to outline the little elements with a darker shade. I've made the edges more darker here. This painting took me about 45 minutes, which is basically a lot of time to do my bullet journal setups. As you can see here, I'm using a tissue to soak up the waters because I don't want to add too much water into this notebook, and if I add too much water, this painting or this spread could be warped out, which I really don't like on my bullet journal. Besides this water bottle, I am trying to add a few shells here, and I think the snail shell look like a snail shell, but the other shell doesn't look like that, and it kinda gave me a very headache when I was coloring them with all these brown shades because they all look like the same. And if you have noticed my nails, I have done a metallic nail polish, and I wanted to add some glitters or some pastel colors into this illustration, but later I have thought that I shouldn't add any pastel colors or make this whole illustration look like a fusion because I know I like warmer tones in my bullet journal. So yeah, so in the top I am trying to color out the cork of this bottle and also a small rope with it, and I think that this rope with the cork doesn't look very well after coloring this out, so I'm going to use my fine liner to add a few more details, and I think this worked pretty well and it looks like rope. That's it for this whole painting, and I like the painting a lot. And for the title I am using this brown fine liner, and I'm making the title with a calligraphy font that I always do. For my patrons, I am preparing this whole illustration in a digital form, so that looks more good in my sense. So if you're interested, you can check my Patreon page. And yeah, that's it for this whole cover page, and it took me about 45 minutes to complete this whole illustration, which is a huge time, but I think it was worth it because I like the illustrations a lot. The next spread I'm making in this setup is my calendar page, and for the calendar page I am going with a one-page calendar in horizontal form because I do want a bit space for this month, and I don't want to have a pretty large calendar this month as well, like my previous month in June. I always like to add a calendar page because sometimes I just use my calendar page more than anything else to plan out my days. And for this calendar page I'm going with this brown marker for the outline, and for the inner spaces I'm using this bluish gray shade, which kind of similar to the bottle color. So I am going to use this brush pen, and so I'm using the fine tip of this brush pen. For the header, I'm not going to use any kind of brush pens. I'm using the watercolor so that they look cohesive and they look stunning because of the watercoloring effect. And for this calendar page, I have gone for 5x4 grids for each spaces, and I think it's pretty useful for those who want a larger space but not 2-page calendars. So that's it for the calendar page. This is very minimal and I like it a lot. So the next spread I'm making is my tracker spread, including my habit, mood and workout tracker like the previous month. And I really like this kind of layout to combine all of these trackers together. And for that reason, I always go with 1 or 2 illustration in this whole tracker spread so that I don't have to go too much illustration in this whole spread and feel overwhelmed. So here I'm making this side illustration with this bluish background, and here I'm going to color 4 shells, but mistakenly I didn't press the record button, I guess, and it didn't film the whole thing, but this is a repetitive illustration, so I hope you don't mind. If you want to recreate this and want a whole picture of this illustration, you can follow me on Instagram because I'm posting every spread of my bullet journal there. And for this habit tracker, I'm going with this cute little header with a little scallop in it. And for my Patreon journaling kit, I've added this kind of headers there and I really like it. So the reward of this month, I am also including a Seashell sticker sheet, which is going to be available in my shop later this week, and I'm very excited about it, so I hope you'll check my shop as well. So for this habit tracker, I have gone for 6 habits to track, and for a mood tracker, I'm going with my regular mood tracker with 31 boxes, which are 3x3 grid spaces, and I really enjoy using this mood tracker because I can color them out and they look pretty cool after coloring the whole thing. And this time I'm going with a workout tracker again, and I believe workout trackers are always in my bullet journal or my planner, but I don't use it at all because I don't work out much. But last month I tried and do quite a few steps for 3 to 5 days, and then I stopped due to my illness. Even though I'm okay with it, there is a little start there, so I'm going to do my workout this month as well. And I forgot to tell you that July is my birthday month. I am not excited about this birthday because I am getting closer to 30 and getting older, even though people from this community don't know that I'm this much old, and I don't think that I'm old much. Here, as you can see, that I've added a bit of dividers in the workout tracker because I wanted to add the Fridays, which is the weekend here, so that I can track out the weeks with it. So after adding some details, I'm finished with this whole tracker spread. And the next spread I'm going to make is my content and planner spread, which is basically a mixture of content planner and shop planner. But if you're not a content planner, you might think that you don't need this, but if you are a student, you can use this as your study planner, or you can use this spread for your household, or you can use this for your work. And when I was doing my part-time job, I always used this planner to plan out my days, and it was quite fun to use this kind of layouts. So as you can see here, I have a vertical calendar, and besides that I have a huge spread to write anything on. And for that calendar column, I will write these things that I'm going to do for my content planning. So that's it, and for the decorations I am going with a little shells here and there, and in the bottom of this planner spread I am going to make this illustration, which is not inspired from anything. It just come from my head, and that I'm drawing this snail shell here, and underneath it I'm going to add a starfish along with a scallop shell, which I think looks quite interesting, and I've included this in the printable of my Patreon stickers, which I like a lot. And talking about my patrons, I would like to tell you that in this month I have gone for watercolor technique as a digital form as well, because I think these shell illustrations looks much more cooler with the watercolor technique, and I've done watercoloring in the digital form for quite a long time for the Patreon printables, so it was a little difficult but not that much. So for tracking my content schedules, I'm adding this mini calendar sticker from my shop, and I really like how this thing works for me. That's it for this whole content planner. It kind of looked a little empty, but after filling out with my plans it will look very clumsy and full. So yeah, and that's all for this whole spread. The next spread is my weekly spread, which is the last spread for this whole setup, and I wanted to make a different kind of layout from my previous ones. So I wanted to go with this kind of layout, which have a larger illustration in the side and then a pretty much space for the planning. For this illustration I've gone with a blue watery background like this, and I had to keep in mind that I cannot use too much water in this notebook, but after a day it kinda turned flat again, but not too much flat, but it doesn't bother me at all. So yeah. For these shells, as you can see here, I am starting with the snail shell again with this reddish orange color, and I really like it. But the next shell just came out of my mind, and I don't have any reference for this shell, so I did a little mistake here. But as I'm using watercolor and the water is not soaked with the paper, I can pick them up. So I used a bit of water, dissolved the paint, and soak it up with my tissue paper. By that I do have some stains in the paper, but I can color them out because I'm using a darker color from this red color which have the stain. So yeah, that's it for this little shell. And the next shell I'm making is again a scallop shell, which I've done multiple times in this whole bullet journal setup. So as I've told you before, that this is going to be repeat again. And so that's it for this illustration. And for the weekly spread, I am going to space out 6 pages here for all of the days and the weekend. I always start from Sunday because Sunday is the first weekday, not Monday here, and the weekend is considered as Friday and Saturday, and I've told this multiple times in my bullet journal setups. And that's why the weekend is basically the Friday and Saturday, which I have spaced out in the last row and the column. And besides that, I have added this task space and a note space so that I can add all the tasks and notes all together, which I'm going to do along this whole week. So that's it for this whole setup, and let's do a flip through of this whole setup because this is the most satisfying thing to do, and you can see all the close-up in this flip through. So I hope you like this video because this is a very precious to me because I have done a lot of research before I do this theme. Even though this theme is not researched much, but I had a lot of summary themes in my head, but I chose this theme because I thought I have never gone for a seashell theme, and I really like this, and I hope you like this too. That's it for this whole setup. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing because that helps me a lot. And I would like to shout out my patrons who are supporting me for such a long time. A quick reminder that I'm going to send out the happy mail very soon, and also the reveal of the next happy mail will be uploaded as well. Without you, I cannot have the courage to open up my shop. And thank you very much for everyone who's watching my videos because this means a lot to me to grow in this creative side of mine, and I really love you all. I hope I see you in my next video because this next video is going to be very interesting. So that's for now, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.